Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Friendship Public Charter School Parent University webinar series. I am Simone Green, and I'm your events and programming director here at Friendship Schools. And today we are continuing our webinar series on wellness. Our guest speaker is Miss JoJo Hickson. She goes, well, actually, her name is Miss Jonisha, JoJo Hickson, but she goes by the name of JoJo. And Miss Hickson is a third year clinical psychologist, clinical psych student and a master's level clinician. She received her Bachelor's of Arts degree from Montclair State University, where she is also declared a minor in Africana Studies. She received her Master's of Arts in Clinical Psychology from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology in Washington, D.C., where she is currently pursuing her doctoral degree. She's a member of the Association of Black Psychologists and serves there as a social media chair, bolstering recruitment, retention, and programming to further the mission of the Association of Black Psychologists. JoJo is externing here at Friendship Public Charter Schools, and she's also consulted with and collaborated with the Montgomery Bar Association on their 20-week Racial Justice Challenge, the Wichita Council of Elders on their racial awareness training, and many other organizations seeking to add the mission of creating a diverse, equitable, and just world. She is a member of the DC Psychological Association, and she serves there as a student representative for the Diversity, Social Justice, and Inclusion Committee, where she curates programming, content, and webinars to raise awareness about racial trauma and other forms of oppression, and further to empower people to advocate for themselves and their community. Just a few housekeeping rules before we bring in Ms. Hickson on. If you have any questions or if you have any comment, please post them in the comment section here on Facebook. And if those who are watching on Zoom, you can also post your questions in the chat room. And if you have any other questions or if you need some assistance, feel free to email us at wecare@friendshipschools.org, or you can call us on our hotline at 202 281 1777. That is 202 281 1777. We thank you all for joining us this afternoon. All right, let's get started. JoJo, you can take it away.
Thanks so much, Ms. Green. So again, my name is JoJo Hickson. I am a third-year clinical PsyD student, and I am externing right now at the Southeast campus. So I'm working with the scholars, the faculty staff there, and I always love it. I'm always so honored to be holding space with the scholars, for the scholars. And today we'll be talking about wellness. So anytime I talk about mental health or anything pertaining to the scholars, I always try to make sure that I am contributing to the mission of Friendship Public Charter Schools, which is a beautiful mission to provide a world-class education that motivates our scholars to achieve, enjoy, and develop life in a way that is optimal to them and their communities. So some of the core values that I take with me when I am working with the scholars or anything with Friendship Public Charter Schools are your core values, which include integrity, responsibility, confidence, care, commitment, passion, persistence, and respect, which are all really good ingredients to making a good person that will be a helpful member of society. So how are we going to accomplish the mission of Friendship Public Charter Schools? I think that the way that we can do that is by leaning into our Afrocentric values. I know for a fact that Friendship Public Charter Schools services predominantly Black and Brown children, and we do have a collectivistic cultural value, which means that we are not inseparable from the people around us. And I think that we should really lean into that. So I wanted to offer this quote, which is an African proverb that says, "The child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth." And so a lot of the times in mental health, or even in the classroom, when we're seeing some of our scholars acting out, that could very well mean that they are dealing with something internally they don't have the language for. So they're probably doing what they can to kind of signal that they need some type of help or assistance. And so I think that it is the responsibility of people like myself, the teachers, the administrators, the parents, the scholars themselves, the neighbors, anyone in the students' village should be helping them to achieve wellness. So when I say wellness, what exactly does that mean? So, in the field of psychology, we define wellness as a dynamic state of physical, mental, and social well-being. So, a lot of the times when people think of health, wellness, think of like physical health. So, is the scholar eating well? Is the scholar sleeping well? Is the scholar exercising enough? But the thing is that wellness is really holistic, and we have to think about, are they spiritually being fed or nurtured? Are they having good interpersonal relationships with other people that identify with them, like friends and families? So we have to look past just that physical health when we're thinking about wellness. um, the literature also says that the result of four key factors that the individual has some control of contributes to their wellness. So again, this might include biology, which is how physically well they are, and if they're nurturing their body enough. Their environment. So, what does the community look like? Is there a lot of community violence? Is there a lot of opportunity for growth and nurturing and exploration? The lifestyle and their healthcare management. So, all of these things, if we're paying attention to that, that really speaks to our wellness. So again, exercising, community education, healing, all these things, which again are very specific to the culture of Black and Brown youth. We love our music, we love our poetry, our arts. We can use that to heal ourselves, and I definitely want to encourage us to do that. So, what are some of the risks to wellness? When we talk about wellness and how we can love on ourselves, that's not just, am I, again, eating a healthy breakfast? Some potential risks to our wellness, especially with regard to the Black community, is racism. Right? We see a lot of the things that happened in this summer did impact our scholars as well as ourselves, and we have to really pay attention to stuff like that and why these things are happening. And so, when I say racism and how that impacts our health, I define racism as a multidimensional system of advantages based on race, usually advantaging white people with structural and ideological components meant to oppress and disenfranchise Black people. So again, when you see some of the scholars or anybody in our neighborhoods having contact with the police or being abused by the police, this is, it's not an anomaly. These are things that our ancestors have dealt with. And this is exactly how the system is meant to work, unfortunately. So we are dealing with a lot of threats to our livelihood, to our wellness. Discrimination can aid in as a threat to our wellness. Also, what's happening with the pandemic, there's been a lot of uncertainty, isolation, or threats to financial stability, as well as us losing our loved ones and not even being able to properly bury them. So all of those things can impact how we are taking care of ourselves and how we are also giving ourselves grace and allowing ourselves to feel certain things. So again, racism is very permanent in our society. It's, unfortunately, it rears its head in every little thing that we do. And so when we look at historically what our ancestors have gone through, these are things that are implicated in like enslavement and sharecropping and race-based exclusion from health, education, social and economic resources. And it translates to all the things we see now. So for example, some of our schools are very undersourced compared to other people in other neighborhoods. And I really, really, really admire Friendship because they do a fantastic job of bolstering the youth, of, calling them in to explore the different things that they might have talents with. So for instance, I follow the social media, and you guys should too, because there's always something going on that will engage the scholars and the families. And I encourage you to take advantage of that, especially right now when we're all confined to our homes. I know that webinars like these are really useful, as well as some of the programs that the art department is offering. Like I saw a flyer for a music festival or something like that. I always see flyers for science fairs and things that really get the youth thinking. So stress might be processed by our youth and our scholars through some of these things that we're seeing institutionally and structurally, and people might not have the language to call it. So it might be that we are experiencing racism and stressors related to racism, but we don't understand that they are connected. And so the stress proliferation model says that stress is initiated by, again, institutional racism. And it might create an initial stressor that can cause other stressors to kind of be more multiplied. So at face value, it might not be a peer to racism, but the literature says that violence in the neighborhood, criminal victimization, neighborhood conditions, financial stress, relationship stress, higher rates of incarceration, police brutality, negative stereotypes, provider bias, access to healthcare, quality of treatment, and internalized racism are all effects that we might be dealing with daily. So these have an impact on our wellness because these things are implicated in employment and housing and income and access to services. And of course, we have to take accountability for our own actions. There are opportunities that we should take, but a lot of the times we are being discriminated against or prejudiced against, where we are not afforded certain opportunities as our white counterparts. So a lot of these things are also associated with being exposed to more danger in the work environment, or even in the home based on neighborhood. So I know a lot of Black people have asthma, myself included, because of our neighborhood conditions and because of the way that the laws allow people to build factories near our kids and stuff like that. This also is impacting us by a lack of available food or healthy food, and easy access to certain things in our neighborhood that might be more guarded in other neighborhoods. So this nice little diagram, again, is based on research. It's based on scholarly activism, and it says that these things are impacting the Black community specifically. So social determinants and health inequality inequities like poverty, incarceration, discrimination, violence. They also influence our morbidity. So why do we have such high rates of diabetes, of cancer, of injury, of mental illness? This is not an accident. Unfortunately, it's all on purpose. So we really have to take control of what we can to survive and to combat these things in the system that kind of is in place to see us lose. The health of African Americans are also kind of at risk because of poor nutrition, physical inactivity, high blood pressure, tobacco smoking, substance abuse. So yeah, a lot of these things are not on accident, unfortunately. But what we can do is we can control the things that we have, the ability to. So that's being kind to ourselves and to one another, the people in our communities. And that means that we do have to give, our teachers some grace. They're also adjusting to a new normal, just like we are. We have to give our scholars some grace. They might not be comfortable attending attending school in the home setting. There might be a lot of distractions. So we have to give them some grace and some patience to adjust. Even 8 months later, it's very unusual for us to still be virtual, because some of these scholars have been in school for years and they've been in brick and mortar or in a certain standardized environment. So we have to give them grace, so we can control, if we are asking for help, if we're taking advantages of the things that Friendship Public Charter School are offering. We can control our own behaviors, our goals, our efforts. We can control learning from our mistakes and normalizing, being wrong sometimes or expressing ourselves ineffectively sometimes. And then we can also control taking care of ourselves. So definitely making sure you have that 3 meals a day if possible, and getting some sleep. And again, just giving yourself grace. So what are some concrete tips that we can do to approach wellness and to make sure that we're doing well, and especially our scholars? We can nurture self-concept, so we can make sure that our youth have a strong understanding of who they are and whose they are, especially being Black. I know that I keep mentioning that, but racial socialization is a super important component for resilience. The truth of the matter is that our Black youth are dealing with things that other kids are not. And they're super conscious of it. They're very aware, especially more so than we were when we were younger. At least me, I know I was working with a young man and he brought up what happened to George Floyd and the police, harming him. And I was like, I had no awareness of this when I was at that age. This young man was 9. I was super impressed, but also really sad because we have a lot of work to do. So they're aware, they're not naive. They know what's going on in the streets, in the news, and they can't really escape it. So making sure we're nurturing their self-concept and instilling pride in them, making sure we're fostering their social relationships with elders and peers, and making sure that they don't feel alone and they feel safe. So ways we can do that is by again, taking every opportunity we can to foster their creativity, to support them, to give them ways to express themselves while they are inclined to the homes, and have to stay isolated because of safety reasons. So taking advantage of opportunities for learning and experiencing new things, coping skills, structured and unstructured activities like the STEM science fairs, or like, I don't know everything about what Friendship has to offer, but I always come across little things. And I know there's some things that they have that the youth can kind of tap into if they have a particular interest. And so making sure we're taking advantage of that, making sure that we are providing them with basic needs and safety, seeking out resources and utilizing them. Again, I've seen Friendship Public Charter School assist our more marginalized families that might be dealing with financial difficulties at the time. So dropping off food baskets or making sure some of these youth have laptops and hotspots. So definitely take advantage of your village. There are resources, but we do have to do our due diligence to seek them out. We also have to make sure we're facilitating, building and promoting opportunities for our scholars to develop personal connections and meaningful connections, a sense of belonging, mastery, and hope. And then we definitely have to address the larger structural issues, which might influence the resources available to nurture a healthy self-concept. So again, talking to our youth about what's happening outside, because again, they are, confined to the home. They might be tapping into social media a lot more or being on their phones. And unfortunately, we cannot monitor them 24/7. So they might be exposed to certain things like seeing someone being targeted because they are Black. So again, there are certain things we can do to kind of foster our well-being. And in the literature, there are certain hormones that are impactful and influential in our happiness and our wellness. So some of them might include serotonin. I know some people hear that when people talk about happiness, but serotonin is the happiness chemical, and you can kind of activate this passively if you open your blinds and get some sun, if you exercise or be active, make sure you're maybe taking one walk around the block every day or every week. You might do yoga or meditation. Or spend some time in nature. There's also dopamine, which is another happiness chemical that is very popular right now. And you can do this by celebrating the small wins. So definitely encouraging your scholar, even though we know in the Black community, Black excellence, it's our job to do well and get good grades, but it's not very easy to get motivation to do that. So if you see your scholar doing a homework assignment, make sure you're giving them that little praise. A little goes a long way. Or if they complete a task, that might make them feel a little bit happier and a sense of accomplishment. Also, you can activate dopamine by taking time for self-care and eating good meals. And then two more short ones with regards to the chemical hormones. Oh gosh, I can't even pronounce this. Oxytocin is supposed to be the love chemical. So you can activate this by giving your scholar a compliment or physical affection. So again, we know certain things are, our responsibility as parents or as caregivers to our scholars, but a lot of things do go without saying, and a little goes a long way. So complimenting them on, good job for finishing your assignment or good job helping out and doing your chores, even if that is their responsibility, giving them a compliment can bolster self-esteem. And then endorphin is the painkiller. These are released after you exercise, but you can also activate these chemicals by laughing out loud, sharing jokes with your family, sharing something funny you saw on the internet. You can activate this by volunteering and giving back, which is something I love to do, which is why I'm always grateful for Friendship, for allowing me to come and share my thought and my expertise and what I'm learning in the classroom, because whoever's watching this, they might learn something new. So I always love that, giving back. You can also activate the endorphin chemical by watching a good movie or exercising. And then again, some tiny small steps you can do. Make sure you're paying attention to the sodium in your diet. Try to eat more veggies and fruits. Try to drink more water. Journal. Definitely tap into your natural creativity and bolster that, even though, academics might be our number one priority. We have to make sure that we are not killing the dreams of our scholars. So if they want to be artists or rappers or, engineers or robotics builders, we have to definitely praise them and tell them that we believe in them. And then all these other fun stuff like praying, doing yoga, taking accountability, giving back, and celebrating small victories. So a huge tip that we love to do at Friendship is to instill affirmations in our scholars. So again, we're getting a lot of negative messages in the media, or maybe when you're reading textbooks even, right, they might have a certain portrayal of Black people that is not accurate or not true. So one instance is that some schools teach in history that Black history starts with enslavement, which is not true. We were, a very well-established civilization well before we were colonized. We were kings and queens, but reading something like that in the textbook might be impactful on one's self-esteem. So We have to remind ourselves and our scholars and the people in our communities who we are and whose we are. And we can do that by actively practicing I statements like I am bright, I am authentic, I am one of a kind, I am resilient. And you might not believe it. You might feel silly if you're saying this in front of a mirror or telling your kid to say this, but at the end of the day, it's definitely transformative, especially the more that you practice it. Um, Lastly, I think we're going to do Q&A at the end if anyone has any questions, but this was something that was in the literature as well. In the USA, African Americans are the least healthy ethnic group. And of course, this is not of our own volition. This is based on a lot of historical things and a lot of racist practices that kind of deny us healthy foods. If you look, you can just take a look in your neighborhood sometimes, and you might notice that there's more liquor stores or hair stores or Chinese restaurants than there are like Whole Foods or organic foods. At least in the neighborhood that I grew up in, that was the case. And I didn't notice that these things were intentional, but as I get more into my academic career, I know that they are. So we have to definitely do what we can to combat these things. Some resources that you can use, you can always contact the school psychologist at Southeast, and even bigger, Dr. Millette, who is the clinical director over all the schools. She's doing a fantastic job to make sure that we are incorporating wellness and encouraging wellness that includes the mind, body, and spirit. So shout out to her. You can also look to the Association of Black Psychologists, Psychology Today. They have really good free resources that speak specifically to our communities and how our mental illness or even some issues that we're having physically might manifest in the classroom and other places in our lives. You can also download the Calm app, and make sure that your scholar has access to resources like these numbers. Mental health is very stigmatized in our community. Unfortunately, a lot of us don't want to talk about if we are depressed. We don't want to call it that. If we're really sad, if we're having issues of finding a will to live, even we don't want to talk about that because that is taboo. So your kid might be experiencing this and not telling you. So even if you want to, offer them this kind of, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? This kind of IV thing, this kind of branch of hope, you can send them these. They might use it, but they might not, but it's still important for them to have. And these are some other things that are specific to Black mental health. So yeah, that is all I have, Miss Green. Thank you all so much for sharing space with me and allowing me the opportunity to share what I know and what I'm learning.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that informative presentation on our wellness, not only our how our mental wellness affects our physical and our spiritual wellness. We know that during this pandemic, we have been disrupted and we have also been interrupted, and now we have to cope because this is still a new normal. We have been introduced to a virtual reality, if you will, and virtual automation, and all those things has been introduced forever in our lifestyle, and it affects our kids and how they have to cope where they are now going to be in a hybrid like lifestyle, where there's still restrictions, but they are also have to go back to school at some point, but yet there's a time where they will have to be learning virtually as well. And this is also great for our teachers as well, and how they will also be able to cope in this particular new dynamic. And hope that those teachers who are watching now are going to be watching later, that you all take a look at this and see how you are able to deal with wellness spiritually, mentally, and physically, and how to cope with stress during this changing time. So I thank you again. If you have any questions or if you have any concerns, we can be reached via email at wecare@friendshipschools.org, or you can reach us on our hotline at area code 202-281-1777. 202-281-1777. We don't have any questions or anything from our Facebook comments. So thank you, Miss Jojo Hickson. Again, the future is ahead of you. God bless you for all that you are doing and continue to do on the behalf of our community and specifically our children. Everyone, we will all see you next week. Thank you, and we'll see you at 4 p.m. next week.
Yay.